I think the last 2 World Cups were a little bit less than it is now. We're talking about all the games that are going to be at 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m. And that's when you also see, I think, for operators where most actually is always ongoing, right? We look at Champions League nights, an example, is always very busy for Sportsbook.
Many customers who don't actually have, let's say, a television feed or otherwise, often actually use gambling sites, and I know because I've been there, to gain insights on what's happening in sports betting. Most gambling sites provide data faster than radio and television. The interesting thing about sports, which people really undervalue, is even those people who are not predominantly gamblers or players will place a bet on a World Cup. So it's also a very short window, an opportunity to create more players.
Users came for real football, but they stay active around those matches. And general turnover increased for more than 20%. Bet volume grew for over 30%, and unique bettors increased by more than 40%.
We can definitely see that a lot of hype around it. There is a lot of talk around it. And from a sporting perspective, I also don't think we've had a World Cup in a long time where there is not that 1 or 2 teams who are definitely going to win it. But if you look at the teams now, there's probably like 6, 7, 8, which is always good for the sportsbook because now you get a lot of different, volumes on the different matches.
We've never really had as much viewership as we have today. Technology has led us to much better streaming technology, which means ultimately far more people are viewing the World Cup today than ever before.
E-leagues are on 24/7 across multiple parallel streams. So in total, we produce like 500,000 events per year. Second one is speed. Matches last from 8 to 12 minutes. That creates a fast betting loop. Place a bet, watch, settle, repeat.
If a player is coming in to gamble on the World Cup and it's their first time playing with a sportsbook, what experience do you want to give them? Yes, you're going to have a lot of fraud. Yes, you're going to have a lot of age verification failures. So provisioning goes across the board. My opinion, extra customer support, extra risk, because these are the things that are going to define a player's experience.
A major tournament like World Cup actually fuels the volume for eFootball or cannibalizes it?
Short spoiler, it is not cannibalizing.
Hello everyone, this is Faruk and welcome to Revpanda Live. Today we are officially kicking off the World Cup 2026 series, and in these episodes, of course, we will have a lot of fun. We'll talk about who's going to lift the trophy in New Jersey, but mainly we'll go behind the scenes and we'll talk about the biggest sports event of the year to cover what it means for operators, affiliates, and also players. I will have top experts in the industry and get ready for amazing content as usual. We'll talk about what you can expect from the tournament, how to prepare it, the expensive mistakes you must avoid, and why this World Cup will be a different one. Today, I'm joined by a dream team of iGaming industry experts, Roger Redfearn-Tyrzyk, CCO at Shufti, Vitalii Semeniuk, Esports product growth partner at Bettors, and Mr. Oliver De Bono, founder at Quantum Gaming. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Can we just go for a quick round of introduction from each one of you for those listeners who just met you today?
Hi everyone, I'm Vitalii. I'm esports product growth partner at Bettors. I've been in esports since 2011, working across competitive ecosystems from grassroots tournaments to global events. And today I'll focus on how fast esports formats integrate into sportsbook architecture and drive predictable engagement and margin performance.
That's a solid one. Roger, let's go.
My name is Roger Redfearn-Tyrzyk. I'm also very impressed by the pronunciation. How you said the name is not the easiest. Now I've been in the iGaming industry and kind of their compliance now since 2016, and obviously a lot has changed since then, but a lot more change even coming now, and happy to be here and talk about it, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, Roger, I live in Poland, so for me, it's a little bit easier.
It's very impressive. Very impressive.
Oliver.
Fantastic. My name is Oliver De Bono. I'm the co-founder here at Quantum Gaming. I've been in the industry for about 2 decades now, starting in the early days, 05, 06. Built a couple of different projects. Essentially, we are a gaming platform. I originally started in Sportsbook, now a little bit more casino, but shifting back to Sportsbook. We are focusing heavily on removing the barriers to entry in the industry. And I'm really excited to talk about how sports is kind of not just coming back, but it's becoming essential to the gaming environment.
Yeah, talking about sports, definitely we'll jump into the data and talk about all those things, Oliver. But I want to ask you, who's your favorite team in this World Cup?
So since Malta never really get into the World Cup, I'm going to say the UK. Well, not the UK, England, really. I don't know if any of you know, but Malta is basically divided with two major supporting groups. It's England or it's Italy. And it's actually really good fun, but England myself.
Roger?
Yeah, no, I think for me, obviously, there is, I would say, three teams in total, right? I mean, obviously, family and born in Poland, then, obviously, Germany, for growing up. And then, of course, my wife and my kids are English and born in England. So, there is, a lot of teams, but I mean, to me, of course, if you look on paper, I mean, is there a better team than England right now? Probably not. Germany, a lot of struggles, but always rooting for Germany. So but it's gonna be a good one, that's for sure.
Roger, I think you have the biggest chances here. It's combined.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm up in my chances, right? But
Sounds like you get three teams.
Exactly, and I hope their defense hold up as well as the KYC systems in our industry. So let's see how it's going to be. And Vitalii, coming back to you.
Yeah, so that's a tricky question because we're going to have our national team participating, I hope, after upcoming matches in March, I guess. So we'll be definitely cheering for Ukraine national team, but not sure in terms of performance. So I'll say the classic phrase that I'll be cheering for the interesting game and engaging matches. So basically every pair of teams who will be able to generate this engagement, it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, we pronounced really strong names here today, so it's going to be really very exciting for me. So, gentlemen, just wanted to let you know, today we are actually getting out of our typical format, and I would like this to be a kind of a fireside chat. So I'm very curious about certain things. I prepared my own questions for each one of you. But you can always step in and comment, the other things, the other, expertise and so on as you like. So just feel free to go. It will be, in my opinion, much more fun today. So this question is to everybody, guys. So the World Cup is approaching, and I believe this will be fundamentally different for iGaming ecosystem because in my opinion, there are so many reasons. So what's your opinion? Do you think that it will be a completely different shift when it comes to iGaming for this particular tournament?
This one, I'm quite interested because it's basically going hand in hand with our business model right now. It's not just that it's fundamentally different. I mean, the World Cup has been, let's call it, a major calendar event of the iGaming industry since the conception of the iGaming industry. But ultimately, it's interesting now because sports is becoming predominantly more popular than it was. I'm not talking about, decades ago, but we have this hype where originally the gaming industry was poker, then sports, then casino, and now we're coming back to sports a little bit. So it's not only a fantastic acquisition tool for the iGaming industry, to feed into other sections, but ultimately we've never really had as much viewership as we have today. Technology has led us to much better streaming technology, which means ultimately far more people are viewing the World Cup today than ever before. Population increases, general connectivity. So there's a lot behind this World Cup that's going to be a great opportunity. It's also interesting that it's being played all in different states, right? So this also brings a wider audience or a physical audience to the table. So there's a lot of opportunity, and I definitely think this World Cup is important, not just because it's important as a World Cup, but it's also a very unique time for the gaming industry. New regulations, continental shifts within gaming are leading towards, new landscapes that didn't even exist before. I mean, look at the Middle East. Nobody ever thought the word iGaming and Middle East would go together. There's a huge football fan base over there, which is now essentially available to the gaming industry. Not fully yet, but we're getting there. So, Faruk, to answer your question, I mean, it's definitely the most hyped World Cup to date.
Absolutely, and what's changing is not only the people and the connectivity, the technology is also changing. So we'll touch base on that. That's actually my biggest take, honestly, in today's iGaming industry when I look at that, you know. So the technology will be really changing so many things, because in the past we didn't really have all those tools and so on, but this time it's going to be so interesting. Roger, do you have any take on that? Why this World Cup will be different?
Yeah, no, I think from I guess, perspective for sportsbooks, right? It's always a run against the masses and of course the fraudsters when it comes to compliance itself, right? Because in the end of the day, you want to make sure that your business actually, of course, gains from it, right? So you want to let's say, verify and onboard the right people that you want to bring in. You also want to make sure, of course, that you don't fall off the trap of, your bonus abusers or any underage people, trying to, to get access to your system. And of course, with the new threat of AI being around, I mean, we've all seen how quickly in the last 12 months, image generation has gotten better, how many, let's say, new functions it really has, right? And of the day, there's no two ways about it. I mean, right? I mean, fraudsters always evolve, and so, of course, must the operators. So, for us, I think it's going to be I would say, like, from a size perspective, again, I think, and Oliver also mentioned this, I think, from a hype, I think the last two World Cups were a little bit less than it is now. I just think also, going back to the US, having all these, really nice stadiums, whether that's in the US and Canada and Mexico, and, really having it on, prime time TV, right? I mean, we're talking about all the games that are going to be at, 6 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., and that's when you also see, I think, for operators, where most actually is always ongoing, right? We look at Champions League nights, an example, is always very busy for Sportsbook. So I think from that perspective, it's going to be a little bit different, because I think the operations teams are going to be sweating, for probably a good 2 months, a month before and during, and of course, after. So it's, I think it's going to be a great one for the industry. I think, especially if you look at the, and we sometimes forget, right? I mean, like, if you compare sportsbooks, how they were, an example, 8 years ago, right? I mean, let's go back an example into the World Cup of 2018, and now you get all these, like, engagement, right? We've also seen streaming services bringing in their own sportsbooks, right? Which is, in the end of the day, super, super interesting as a proposition for, like, let's say, sports fans, as an entertainment product. So it's going to be a lot different. Like, I also think that, let's say, the digital and how much more accessible everything is. I think there's going to be, and my prediction will be, if you ask me right now, I genuinely think we might be looking at maybe, double the traffic than what we've seen 4 years ago. Just because of how it's all developed, but it's yet to be seen. But I think we can definitely see that there is a lot of hype around it. There is a lot of talk around it, and from a sporting perspective, I also don't think we've had a World Cup in a long time where there is not that one or two teams who are definitely going to win it. But if you look at the teams now, there's probably like 6, 7, 8, which is always good for the sportsbook, because now you get a lot of different, volumes on the different matches. And I mean, again, it was a long answer, but I'm genuinely really excited for this World Cup.
Yeah, double the traffic is very strong prediction here, Roger. So I will really check all the reports and so on. Thanks for that one. Vitalii, also, so many World Cups didn't have esports or e-leagues. Now, it is stepping into. So do you think that it will be also a different environment as we have right now in our arsenal, something called as esports?
Yeah, so if we are speaking about this part of fast betting esports, and yes, to support what previous speaker said, that I believe that there is a huge difference in the scale of pressure on the product architecture. And yes, probably bringing, that huge amount of traffic during matches. That's something that people are ready to do. But if you're speaking about handling the next quest, which is retention, I think that's another interesting thing that worth exploring, and that's what I would be personally following and looking at on how different companies, and especially in different time zones as well, going to handle it, because not for everyone it's the best time zone where it will happen.
Right. Roger, when you were talking about the technology, in this World Cup, it's not going to be only the technology on the pitch that is going to be really advanced and different. And as you know, there will be like automated offside calls or VAR systems and so on. But also, this is going to be probably the first deepfake World Cup that many people would like to just use the AI-generated deepfakes that are designed specifically to bypass ID verification. So you're really experienced in this field and you follow the technology really very closely. I just wonder, how can an operator hit that 30 seconds onboarding target without opening the gate to sophisticated AI injection attacks?
I think the challenge will probably be not to do it in 30 seconds, but to do it sub 15 seconds, because in the end of the day, if you look at the competitive landscape in whichever country you are, there's a lot of operators that will be obviously competing for it. But to go into technology, I think specifically for let's say, myself, I've seen obviously like various different tournaments and also like big events, whether that's also on the horse racing side, which specifically in England brings a lot of traffic. But I think, the technology has evolved a great amount, also with the help of AI, because in the end of the day, and this is, this is something which goes back to like an example, also, fires themselves, right? How do you extinguish fires? You don't do that by just pouring millions of gallons of water on it. You have to fight fire with fire, right? So this is why we now have to fight AI with the help of AI, because then, we can detect it, we can detect it quicker, and also make sure that that we see it. Because I've seen some videos lately of like, let's say just, it might be just comedians, let's say, speaking over it, but it's just crazy, right? It looks like totally real. And of course, there is certain politicians that people like to make fun of, and it just looks totally real. But at the same time, of course, it's the same with any driving licenses, ID cards, passports. Unless you have the technology that can really detect it. And I think, specifically where I'm at now at Shufti, when I joined in July, the last 6 months, like the engineering team, I've spent so much time on using AI to that effect and really making sure that we controlled it in a way. Again, not a single system in the world is going to be perfect, because again, people have new ideas every day, how to be a better fraudster than you. I think overall it's really about, like stacking risk signals, because, we've seen before, we've seen kind of like the transformation now from where compliance was like, do I really need to do it? Yeah, okay, here you go. To now really using compliance as an advantage, because people feel safe on your platform and people know that, you have a good reputation as a business as well. So, I think there is a lot that's going to happen, a lot that's going to, let's say, lead up to it. But I think, if you have a strong partner in the IDV space, and certainly some other companies in the space are really reliable and really good when it comes to it. And it's just really about making sure that you preempt things, right? It's about preempting things, putting things already there. So if this happens, we will do this. But again, there is not a silver bullet against it. There never will be. Like you say, there's going to be a lot of deepfakes going around, and a lot of people that will want to, gain access, and not only because they're underage, but because they might be in countries where gambling is not allowed. An example where there is no, let's say, regulated gambling. People will, of course, want to trick the system to get the best offers that they could get.
Well, definitely, it's like AI is fighting with AI, according to what you say. So that's going to be so interesting. So whoever has the best infrastructure and has spent the best on that will be winning, I guess, that competition that you are talking about. Vitalii, many operators focus on the tournament with the matches on the pitch, but I think esports having a lot of traction recently, it is going to be also another reason for me that this World Cup will be a different one. Some operators, they still view esports as a kind of an alternative content. But I know that, from the other conferences that you were speaking on the stage, that you have a different argument for that. So according to you, it should be a kind of a, let's say, core product in their architecture. Why should operators consider e-leagues and treat them as a primary product ahead of the World Cup?
That's a good question, and I would always argue that thinking that e-leagues are being positioned as an alternative or supporting content, I would argue that this is something outdated thinking, because for operators this product delivers a bunch of structural advantages. And just wanted also to add a couple of fundamentals. I'm speaking right now about the content, which is player versus player, where we see two people playing against each other. In our case, in eFootball, whatever game it is, and basically about those advantages. So first one is continuity. Like e-leagues are on 24/7. Across multiple parallel streams. So in total, we produce like 500,000 events per year. And there is no dependence for it for external calendars. Second one is speed. So it's one of also important advantages because matches last from 8 to 12 minutes, which basically fits into the break in between halves of the match as well. And yes, that creates a fast betting loop, place a bet, watch, settle, repeat. This drives engagement and session depth, basically, and gives you an opportunity in between of those halves to, entertain your audience, keep them on the platform and, create extra interest for them. Another one is... I would say control, because unlike real sports here, schedule is fully managed. Match density can be increased around traffic peaks and reduced when needed. So basically, we carefully take a look, for example, during some top tournaments or top matches, where exactly to put extra matches so audience gets what they need in those specific traffic spikes moments. And fourth and most important is stability. So high quality products, so they typically deliver around 7% predictable margin, and which means basically you can always rely on this content. It's not being valued because it is exciting. It's being valued because it is predictable and stable.
Yeah, Vitalii, it sounds like we never leave players alone. During the match, they bet on the match and they go to e-leagues. So this is whole the system designed for that, we get the most out of a player here. Well, if we put the e-leagues as a part of the product package, it is, one thing, but at the end of the day, when we have these high spikes in the volume, some things break down. So I just want to ask Oliver, to you work with many operators, like for almost 2 decades that you're in the industry. You know this very well, in my opinion. You followed a lot of World Cups as well. When that massive traffic spike hits during the opening match, let's say, what is the first thing that typically breaks down in an operator's tech stack? Is there some kind of a hidden bottleneck?
Well, the funny thing is, this is actually quite interesting because, we've seen sites go down in the past, but essentially where we are today, there's a little bit of a misconception. Platforms today are quite high tech, especially if you're in the gaming space. Let's be fair. A sportsbook event isn't as demanding on a platform as casino. That's the reality of things. It's the feed that actually takes a lot of weight. But essentially, if you've got 10,000 players, playing casino, doing one round every 2 to 3 seconds, the bet and win package is substantially large. You have 13, 14, 15 checks at every click. That's heavy. Sports, what happens essentially is the incoming feed. That's obviously your first, let's say, potential bottleneck. And obviously you've got a lot of viewers. So it's those few minutes before the match when all the pre-match bets are going in. That's kind of your bottleneck period, where casino can last over a tournament. Sports is that 5 to 10 minutes. So if you've got essentially a light platform, then you definitely need to prepare if you need to increase your nodes. But it's rare in today's market. I think the biggest issue or the biggest, let's say, growth we saw in sports technology was more live feed. Once upon a time, things like Running Ball didn't exist. I was in the market ops department in Betfair back in 2007. We used to do everything on satellite feeds and then input all the information manually. This was a bottleneck because when you've got, 2, 3, 4 million gamblers on a big product like Betfair and you make a mistake, that was deadly. But going back to the bottlenecks, in today's market, it's more of a question of how many features you want, how much, detail you want to give about the match. Basically, you, let's say, prepare or you kind of base your requirements simply on what you're giving to your customers. Many customers who don't actually have, let's say, a television feed or otherwise, often actually use gambling sites, and I know because I've been there, to gain insights on what's happening in sports betting. Most gambling sites provide data faster than radio and television. This was actually one of the great, I would say, turning points in live betting when, products like Running Ball came into the market. But that data was being fed through a third party, fed into those risk and trading teams and then distributed. What we used to do is basically you've got a lot of data coming in. And essentially what you do is you create a delay of 10 to 15 seconds to give that to the customers. The biggest problem used to happen is if your incoming data is slower than what people can see on the pitch, that's when you need to look at your risk. So look, there's a lot of different things. Your technical requirements are not as heavy as one would think on the platform during the actual event. It's essentially those minutes leading up to it. You don't want to have technical issues that could be catastrophic to taking your bets and also your player experience. But the interesting thing about sports, which people really, I think, undervalue, is even those people who are not predominantly gamblers or players will place a bet on a World Cup. So it's also a very short window, an opportunity to create more players. So yeah, to circle back to your question, it's less of a bottleneck with the platforms today because most of the platforms can handle that kind of load. It would be very rare to have such a load to create a bottleneck, but it comes down to more what you're offering them. You have some platforms, especially during World Cup, that will actually have live television feed. That becomes heavy because you're distributing it to potentially, I wouldn't say millions per brand, but there are a lot of customers viewing. So some risks, not too many, but definitely something to prepare for.
Oliver, I love your optimism here, and I'm so excited, how we are witnessing these incredible times that we are alive. Look at this technology where we are. I remember, back in 2000s, when I was selling the products when it comes to the technologies, marketing automation, and so on. There were price items per each API connection, load or volume on that. Right now, these are not even the thing. It is just computation is really fast growing right now. So it is really great time to be alive, honestly, if you enjoy technology like yourself. Roger, do you have any cases that you saw something just blown up in the first steps of any of your partners that you work in the past or anything that you witnessed? I'm just so curious about the onboarding process, especially.
Yeah, no, I think just to go back to what Oliver was talking about, I think if you remember, there was a case where and this is how far obviously technology has come from, which we just alluded to with how quick everything is nowadays. I don't know if you've ever read about this story, but it was in the BBC documentary. There was two friends that were essentially betting on a lower level tennis, and it wasn't like, let's say, the ATP or WTA, like major tournaments. But one of them was sat in the crowd, and the data, let's say, input to the sportsbook was delayed about 20 seconds. So when somebody won, an example, a point, like they would say, "Hey, bet on this now because because he's won it." And obviously, in those 10 seconds, these things happen, and that's why we've seen those things, like an example, a 10-second countdown on a live bet because of those situations, because people are obviously there. So again, technology evolves, and sometimes like we've gone from delays of 20 seconds to now, like, let's say, a delay of merely a second or sometimes even under it until the data updates. But I think to go back, we've seen it. I mean, to be fair, when, especially those like big events happening, and when there's like a surge of, let's say, millions of users that are trying to, let's say, an example, register at the same time, and then you've got other, let's say, millions trying to place a bet at the same time. And of course, there is a lot of stress on the system. And of course, it has happened in the past, where, like, an example, the website just goes down for 5 minutes just because the traffic is too much, right? So, and this is something which, of course, is a huge business risk because, and no one can really afford that, because it could potentially, cost you upwards of hundreds of millions, just in that 15 or 20 minutes you were down. So it is obviously super, super important that you stress test the system as much as possible. However, sometimes it's so unprecedented, and especially if companies somehow have a viral moment, and obviously in the times of social media nowadays, this can happen anytime, right? Somebody puts out an example, a Instagram reel or something on X, and then people jump on it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to this website, and I'm gonna do it. So it's we've seen this before, and I think even more than now, obviously, with the influence of social media, it's gonna be there. So I think let's say, and I don't want to be in the shoes of any of the DevOps engineers during the World Cup, because that's just literally a 24/7 job for some. And again, plan ahead as much as possible. For us as a supplier, we have to, of course, make decisions that kind of prevent from these things happening, right? So rather than let's say just depending on one data center and that backup in that data center, we then have a way of, let's say, deploying the traffic through different ways, and making sure that if one data center goes down, that the other can be quickly routed onto it, right? So we've got a very talented engineering team here, and we've got a lot of confidence in them that they can do it. But I think it's from that side, again, everyone's going to be on their toes, and you can be sure that, there's going to be a lot of people who will not have a lot of sleep during those 6 weeks.
This story you told, Roger, reminded me those times that when American Stock Exchange, actually New York Stock Exchange, they just started the online trading. Some companies were setting up, their centers close to the stock exchange, so the internet connection will be much faster because it was just new at that time. So it just reminded me, those times in the industry. So, gentlemen, I will actually get back to you regarding the checklists. So what to do on those, times when the volume is high, what would you recommend? But before that, now let's assume that things are working very well. And the operators, that are getting ready for the World Cup, they are looking for some ways to perfect the product. And in my opinion, there's a misconception in the market that eFootball is actually competing with the same audience as the traditional football. So I just want to address this question to Vitalii. Do you think a major tournament like World Cup actually fuels the volume for eFootball or cannibalizes it?
Short spoiler, it is not cannibalizing. But when you speak about details, so most recent large events that we can, I would say, at least partially compare were Euro 2024 and Copa America. where we received a lot of interesting data from our clients, and when we analyzed it, we saw interesting patterns where activity did not peak only during real matches. We saw spikes with bets on our content before matches, between games, and after match days ended. And so, yes, users came for real football, but they stay active around those matches. And in data, it looked like, in general, turnover increased for more than 20%. Bet volume grew for over 30%, and unique bettors increased by more than 40%. So basically, it's not kind of replacement or cannibalization. This is amplification. Real football peaks, and football amplifies it by having its continuous and short session matches that I mentioned before. Yeah, now thinking about World Cup, we expect it to be even bigger, considering the names of the teams and their worldwide interest to this tournament. So, yeah. It's not even, that eFootball should benefit from it. It's how operators going to structure it and how they're going to bring it to their users to benefit it both before, during, and after this matches.
Right. And, we often talk about these volume spikes, Vitalii, and you mentioned those actually really advantageous things, especially for the retention. So when the final match is over, what to do and so on. And I really want to come back to you on that. And I want to ask that question about the retention part. There's just one thing still, in my head when it comes to those volume spikes before we leave that particular section in the conversation. Roger, you said that you expect the volume to double compared to 4 years ago. And there we were talking about many nations will be coming. There will be even more people are attracted to the World Cup. So obviously there will be different age groups as well. And age verification is one of the most important items on the checkbox of operators. Especially we see EU's age verification blueprint, which is in effect right now. And in UK, we have an Online Safety Act, and they are ramping up enforcement. So they may even have really high fees, as far as I know, about like 10% of global turnover and so on. These are like big numbers. Can you tell us about the importance of age verification and how operators can implement it effectively?
Yeah, let's not open the can of worms of all these new regulations because my blood pressure will go through the roof and my doctor will tell me off. But no, I think I think when it comes to age verification, we have to be very clear, and I think this is something the industry can be proud of. I think when it comes to age verification, it always has been very robust in iGaming. I think it's and I was talking about it. I think now like 3 or 4 years ago that. Like sometimes like the iGaming industry or sometimes people outside of the iGaming industry forget how many regulational pressures there are in KYC and AML compared to some of the other industries, right? I mean, you just look at some of the stuff that's happening with like the, good old school banks, and what's going on there. And I think, age verification as a whole. And I remember when I started in the industry, I mean, like those were always the requirements from operators. And this goes back to 2016 that they always need an age verification check for each and every customer. Right. So, and of course it is very, very important. And especially now, obviously a lot more money has flown into the iGaming sector from investors, from outside investors. And of course, brand reputation is everything, right? And if you hear, and if your brand then has a story in a newspaper that, you have allowed a 16-year-old to gamble or something, no one can afford that, right? And I think everybody is really aware of those risks. And I think, it goes beyond compliance teams now, even like, let's say the CEO or the CCO, they will be like, hey guys, we cannot afford any of this. And we have to make sure that, we do everything by the book, and we do everything in a way that's let's say obviously customer friendly. And again, then with the payment solutions, right? I mean, now the regulations, even for payment solutions, they have to now verify the age of certain customers, right? And even when we look into, the, whatever you want to call it, the black market or the operators outside of the jurisdiction, I mean, even they have started doing it now. You might not see it. Because you don't have to upload an ID or anything when you register in. But you can be sure that in the background, they're checking against some sort of database whether your name and your address and your age is associated, and if that's the right thing. So 100%, it's super, super important, and I think everyone is aware of it. And and I hope that everyone is prepared for these cases, because specifically, I think the last World Cup, I mean, I think, we detected something over 1,000 underage players trying to open accounts with only one operator, right? So that's just one, and obviously there's hundreds now. So but I think, generally saying, I think the industry is very well aligned when it comes to age verification anyway.
This data, does it change based on the geos, or is it a data that you saw from Europe, or it's sort
No, this was an operator in Europe, yes.
All right.
So and then if you look at obviously like operators across, I mean, in the US it's a little bit more complicated, because of course in some states you have to be 21 in order to gamble, right? So do you class people as underage in that case? In that case, you just say they're not of an age to gamble, right? So, I think this is this is data from an European operator, and also from some of our partners as well. We've seen, let's say, figures that are way higher than this in certain cases in certain countries.
Thank you, Roger, for that. This is quite interesting, because demographics are really different when you look at different geos. So it is such an impressive data, honestly. Oliver, it is time for checklists. So, as you know, the World Cup is approaching, and Roger, earlier you said it's going to be a massive stress test for operators and their entire tech stack. So, Oliver, I want to ask you, if you recommend a checklist for operators ahead of the tournament, what would it look like?
So, as I said earlier, I mean, my opinion, again, it also depends on how new your tech stack is. It's less of a weight on the tech stack purely for the incoming traffic. To be honest, I mean, visitors themselves are not as heavy on platforms as they were 5-10 years ago. The true test of a platform is actually transaction based. So this is kind of where the true weight comes in, unless you have certain features like, you're showing live feeds and so on and so forth. That's where the weight comes in. But the true checklist for me, when it comes down to something like the World Cup, isn't just your tech stack. It's your provisioning your employees as well. So I know you guys mentioned something, Roger, you said something very interesting. You get a lot of players, especially those, who fail, I don't know, KYC or age verification. Why? Because you're attracting a group of players who may fall outside of your regulated space. So what do you do? What is the choice? You delay KYC and essentially ruin some customers' experience. So your provisioning is not just about tech. It's about your entire flow. If you anticipate we're going to have more customer support, we're going to have more KYC requirements, we have higher risk in gambling when it comes to, I'm saying, sportsbook, odds factoring. So provisioning on tech is less important than it was, as I said, 5 to 10 years ago, because tech has improved. I mean, if you've got a decent CDN or you're AWS native, you probably don't need to provision very much on the tech front, because, again, unless 1 million players are coming in playing that bet all at once, it's not as heavy as it was in the past. But you do need to provision for the player experience. And that's key over here. Because if a player is coming in to gamble on the World Cup and it's their first time playing with a sportsbook, what experience do you want to give them? Yes, you're going to have a lot of fraud. Yes, you're going to have a lot of age verification failures. So provisioning goes across the board. My opinion, extra customer support, extra risk, because these are the things that are going to define a player's experience. Speed, yes, but as I said, it's easier to provision, with newer technology than it was a number of years ago. But what you don't want to do is delay payouts, risking those players not getting whatever amount from a particular match, because payouts itself means a withdrawal, or you actually approve the payment because the account has been flagged, allowing that user to play on another event. So we've had this kind of scenario in the past. You need to provision across the board if you're anticipating big traffic. I mean, we do this even on an affiliate campaign. My team says to me, look, Oliver, if you think there's a big campaign coming out, because I like to get very involved in acquisition, we inform the team, listen, guys, CPM campaign coming in from, Latin America. Why does this make a difference? Sometimes it's not even the weight of the platform that suffers. It's just your Cloudflare thinking it's a DDoS attack. And we've had sites slow down. Even though the platform's been fine, it's been identified as a DDoS when it wasn't a DDoS. So all of these things can happen. You simply need to be aware of your, aware of your surroundings. But in this case, aware of your own product's behavior, your incoming campaigns, bonus abuse, as Roger said very, very clearly, age verification, KYC verification. And the beauty of esports, which I want to touch on as well, is it's kind of created this more linear trend during sporting events, where in the past it was match about to start, massive increase, then a drop, another match, increase. Esports has created a more of a linear trend where people can stay on and enjoy, supporting their team in the esports realm or players they know, because the time frames, they're not subject to kickoff times for standard sports. So, yeah, I think the word provisioning is the right one. And over here, in my opinion, it's not just about technology. It's manpower. And as good as AI has become, it's never going to replace, the human interaction. If a customer is upset that their deposit hasn't been approved or their withdrawal hasn't been approved, you can throw as many AI bots as you want, but the human element is key.
You bring us back to fundamentals, Oliver. I think somebody had to say that.
It's always been about fundamentals. No matter how technology has improved, fundamentals are key. I mean, let's be fair. Let's not talk about gaming for a second. Talk about anything you interact with on a weekly, monthly basis. An airline, a shopping site. The moment you get an AI bot talking to you, you get annoyed.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, with airlines, oh my goodness. How many times I get frustrated because it's like, can I please talk to a human because there is an issue? And then you just get this automated message going on. I totally agree with that.
I just go live agent on repeat until they give me a live agent. But the reality is, with an airline, you often don't have a choice. With an operator, you do. That's a lost customer.
I think in the future, we will see if human will stay as important as today, because everything is becoming like AI. Agents are AI and support is AI, as you say. So let's say you're getting service from a bank. If you don't have enough money in that bank, you will just deal with those robots, those agents, and so on. Outside, you go to the ATM. But if you are above a tier, welcome, here I am your customer agent, speak to me, another human. So that's going to evolve to that direction. I think we'll also see this in operators. If you spend less, if you deposit less, we talk to the AI. But if you are a VIP, you come to the people.
So we're saying this internally. Human interaction is the new luxury.
Yeah, you said it very well. Vitalii, Oliver pointed this really interesting trend, and it is going to be really stable and growing. So I just want to ask you your checklist. For instance, let's call it this way: if an operator would like to start including Elix on their platform, how this roadmap should look like? What are the first things that they need to implement?
Well, that would be very, I believe, straightforward and obvious question, but to do the research and open those who already have it, check who is on top, request. So I would look at on the coverage, on the number of the events, on the flexibility, how do provider reacts in terms of different, seasonal events that are happening through the year, how many disciplines they provide, because it's not only about, yes, now we're speaking about eFootball, but we are moving into other different disciplines as well, like e-hockey, basketball, American football, e-cricket, which is quite also trending discipline right now. We are speaking about, let's say, classic esports, which is Counter-Strike, Dota 2, League of Legends, and fast betting formats for those classic esports who are also supporting these events, because classic esports calendars are also not, that big to provide full year content and engagement. So yes, that's, I would say, coverage, margin, key markets offered, and and also probably another thing is that if you go deeper is the latency, which was previously also mentioned. I mean, both in terms of betting latency that could be applied for those matches, because game matches are fast, so the lower latency is, the better. But in terms of streaming latency, in terms of any other extra features that are added to it, like statistical widgets, live broadcasting, which is crucial for esports, and it's possible to have it on the platform without it. So yeah, a bunch of things, but of course, market builds the trend as well. So you check all those who have it, you see who is on top and who is offered above others, and you call Vitalii or his teammates to establish it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when you start with, it is very simple, so just call me, better will help. So that was the first thing came to my mind. If I may, it's just simply market always builds this, right impression of any product. So if you see it being promoted, if you see it above others, that means that brings something. So definitely. Roger, I would like to turn to you regarding the checklist. So Oliver mentioned coming back to fundamentals and onboarding. The player experience is very important. And I want to ask you about the checklist when it comes to onboarding without, having all these, let's say, crashes or letting fraud slip through. How they can make sure that all these steps go well, especially during these really big spikes in the volume?
I promise to make this very short, but I could say for probably a day to explain. But I think on the checklist, I think, first of all, you need to have, do I have the right partner that supports my business in a way that it hits my KPIs and hits the goals that I want to do, right? And that's on whatever stage, KYC, AML, transaction monitoring, etc. So that's the first thing, can the partner actually fulfill what I need them to do? The second thing is, you need to be ready for those spikes, and you need to have also a backup ready, because if you just depend on one solution, you're going to fall on your bottom very hard. Let's just put it that way, because things can happen from one second to another, and if it goes down without the KYC at the registration, you're not going to be able to onboard. And then again, like Oliver said, there is enough competition, so people will just go somewhere else. The next thing is the solution quick enough? Because when it comes to these big events, it needs to be, one of these, right? It needs to be, needs to be very quick, needs to be very snappy. You can't wait longer than really, 5 minutes to onboard somebody. So if your SLAs are 24 hours and it's going to take 1 day to onboard that player is definitely going somewhere else, because they're not going to wait a day just because they're wanting to put we're not just talking about, let's say, the experienced players. We're talking now about those players that want to bet, an example, 10 or 20 euros, or pounds or whatever, right, on a game. So that player will go somewhere else because somebody will be able to onboard them within 30 seconds or 1 minute rather than 24 hours, right? So that's the next thing. The next thing is that you have a very solid real-time notifications, right? That something might be wrong here, that your team is alerted to it. They obviously have time to investigate it as per every regulation. As long as you investigate it within a certain period, you do it properly, you are allowed to do so, right? So as long as you have those real-time notifications, you're going to be fine because your team's going to look at it. False positives and also at the same time, false negatives, right? You want to keep both at the minimum. So that's the next one on the checklist. And then last one, last but not least, which is probably one of the most important ones is what is like how is it influencing your player acquisition cost? Because if you have to keep paying every time and you're not onboarding those those players, it's not going to look good on the numbers, and again it reflects from players going to to your competitors even though you did the check, right? So I mean there is a lot more things, a lot more tangibles that you have to look at, and a lot more things obviously like prior to that. But overall I'd say those are the most important things, and if you don't get it from your partner, then that won't be then you're gonna fall very hard, unfortunately.
We got great checklist from you, gentlemen, but I think we also need to mention testing, because all these things that we talk, they sound really good, but I see sometimes operators, they're not really, emphasizing the testing part of the whole process. So I think we need to look at that a lot. After talking about the really insightful checklist, I would like to also cover this data that I saw before the recording today. So the past data shows that players acquired during the World Cup have a different LTV profile than regular sports bettors. Oliver, I would like to turn to you on that. How should an operator manage their player lifetime strategy differently, especially considering this big event is coming up?
So essentially, you touched on something really interesting there. You did say players acquired during the World Cup have a different LTV. Why? Most of those players, they're passionate about their teams. They're passionate about their sports. So the funnel is different. When their team is playing, they're looking to create a little bit of, let's call it an incentive to watch their actual team. So I don't even remember. I think it was Skybet had this great motto, it makes the game better. And that's kind of what this reminds me of, because players that you're acquiring during the World Cup are normally passionate about sports. I'm not saying that all those betting during that period. I'm saying new players, they're supporting England. They want to put a bet on England. They are there to support their team. And that motto is where it comes into me. So ultimately, how do you define the LTVs? One is probably not a gambler, they're a fan. Okay. And then what I would do over there to create that funnel is to differentiate them. Your funnels have to be a little bit more, let's call it tailored to that user's experience. Meaning, if you see these brand new players that have never played with you before, they've come in, they've bet on England, then you probably should put England in your CRM campaigns for those particular users. The thing is, their events are going to be more sporadic. You can't choose when England is playing. That's a calendar way beyond your control. What you can do is provision for those events. This segment gets this offer, and my assumption is maybe a £10 or €10 bet per event. So you can create your segments that will have different value, and you could potentially cross-sell them into other events and products. But ultimately, your LTV differs greatly, one, depending on your product and your brand. I mean, we're seeing such differentials in player data against what the market has told us for years. I mean, just to give you a little bit of context, Finland, people have told us for years, it's bonus abuse, it's a medium player value. We're seeing bonus abuse, yes, but high player value as well. So it's really, I don't think you should take anything for granted that you hear in the market. Your product behaves the way you designed it to behave. So take your product, look at what it makes you, and then compare that to these, let's say, brand new players. If the average bet for these non-existent pre-World Cup players was €10, there's your baseline. Your role is to get them, one, to come back, two, to take €10 into 20. That's always the goal of a CRM campaign. So I don't think there's a defined rule. I know that your question was, what do we do with these funnels? How do we, analyze this LTV? every case is different and every player segment is different. If you're not segmenting, then you're definitely not going to get the most out of these users. You can't put a World Cup one-time bettor into, a every Sunday, every Saturday across every football league gambler. They're not the same kind of customer.
What you said is so interesting. You said cross-selling the other products like casino, poker, or esports, for instance. So it could be really an interesting retention strategy, right?
Well, 100%. But I'll tell you something about cross-selling. It's a really big word, overused sometimes, I think, in gaming. Esports, you mentioned it because it's perfect. A lot of people once upon a time had this huge misconception that I am going to gather esports players and then cross-sell them into Sportsbook. They're a different breed of players to begin with. Esports is competition. It's not based on the gambling factor. It's a competitiveness that attracts people towards esports, while esports betting is gambling on that event. So you've got basically three segments over here. You've got those who love esports for competition, you've got esports betting, and then sports bettors. So essentially, can you cross-sell the three? Probably esports bettors and sports bettors, yes. Esports fanatics, less likely. But then you can use a similar model, team fanatics to Sunday bettors. My point is, you need to build these segments and test them. That's the only solution here. But the word cross-selling is definitely overused. The best cross-selling you can do is similar products across each other because that segment works.
We know that during the World Cup, there will be a lot of new players coming in. It will work as a acquisition machine, but the challenge is what happens afterwards, right? So in the next months, for example, what you will be doing to retain those players. And eFootball could be one of the examples, and maybe it can, somehow work as a bridge between the tournament spikes and help with the long-term player retention. So what do you think on that, Vitalii? How can operators implement esports as a kind of a long-term retention for those who just came for the World Cup to the platform?
Basically that was a very nice topic when it comes to esports audience, which has a totally different behavior and patterns in terms of what they do, how they bet, and so on. And if you're speaking about fast betting content and fast betting esports and e-league specifically, it is some kind of a bridge. And later you can convert the part of this audience into, from one hand side to the other and backwards. But yes, speaking specifically about e-leagues right now in the eFootball, it is important for those operators. Again, it's not a cross promo, it's the good way of utilizing and having this content on the platform about how do you place it during the match, before match, in the breaks, how do you build your promo campaigns, your VIP campaigns and everything to structure it in the way that audience sees that it's not only sports content happening, there's something else to entertain. And even moving further, not only e-leagues, but different other activities like replays, like some extra application, avatars, and so on. There are a lot of different engagement tools that are built for it. But from my perspective, e-leagues look like things that are consistent and they bring you confidence that you always have something to bet on. So that's why this is the very short but straightforward recommendation. If you still don't have it, you definitely need to look into it and be ready before World Cup starts and before you get all those traffic and people visiting your platform.
Yeah, definitely. Those operators who consider esports, they will, just set up these partnerships. And we often talk about players and KYC of that. Roger, you really shed some light on that. But when the operators, they are, adding additional products or, even security and many other things, it means they're bringing in some B2B partners. And one concept here is getting really important, which is KYB, know your business. And this is really critical. So can you tell us more on that? Like, how can iGaming businesses evaluate their partners ahead of these busy times?
I mean, in certain cases, of course, critical, especially when, we're not talking just about, let's say, affiliates, but it's also, of course, games providers and, in fact, any providers, of technology that you're taking from, this might also be, odds providers. This might also be your sportsbook, platform provider, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is something, of course, that, gets very quickly forgotten because it's, let's say traditionally always been a very, very manual task. But of course, again, it's, sometimes you can't just wait 7 days for somebody to investigate a company and really take a decision. So instead of doing that, and you can also imagine, right, if you have a person which just works for 5 or 6 days, how much that actually costs the company, so rather we would, provide them with data points, from, various business registries and from, various points, whether, the UBOs obviously have any sanctions against them, whether, there is any, of course, insolvencies going on, etc. So, of course, for let's say like providers and sports books or like casinos, it is always super, super important to fulfill the compliance and of course make sure that the company I'm working with is actually who they are, right? So, so from that perspective, I think, we always quickly forget about KYB, but I think, let's say going forward, and I mean, a few operators already do that, use an automated system to provide you, let's say, everything that there is, and then you can essentially spend an hour on this rather than 3 days. And I think, again, going forward, this will be something that a lot of operators will be looking at.
So you're as compliant as your weakest partner when it comes to compliance, right? So that's a key factor, I think, to remember.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's one of those things. I think, KYB is, is probably on the side of even a peskier task for certain, for certain companies than than KYC. And, it can take time. But let's just say, hopefully an operator doesn't start, let's say, integrating and making contracts with any, games and sportsbook providers 1 week before the World Cup, right? Because then that might be a little bit of an issue.
That's true. Timing is so important here, definitely. Gentlemen, if our viewers, they would like to learn more about every single aspect that we covered today, how they can reach out. Maybe Roger, I know you're super active on LinkedIn, but you can tell us how they can get to you.
Of course. I mean, people can reach out, to me on LinkedIn. They can, reach out to me on my email, roger@shufti.com. And, whether that's, questions you might have or any kind of, also, advice you are seeking, for anything in regards to, compliance. And, I'm always very happy to, to connect you with the right people. If I might not help, there's always a person in my network that will be able to help, and always happy to connect with new people. And also, if you see me at one of the very many iGaming events nowadays, then please come up and let's have a cold, refreshing drink.
I love that. I'll be there. Oliver, you're heading to Africa, I think, as the next event, right?
Yeah, I'm flying there this Sunday. Basically, easiest way to contact us is just through our website, quantumgaming.com. You can reach me at oliver.d@quantumgaming.com. Essentially, we're here to support. If you're looking for a platform, if you're looking for information, we love to work alongside operators. That's basically what we do. We're very open to working with providers, whether it's games, CRM, affiliate software, hopefully soon compliance, because we do a lot in-house, but our numbers are scaling. So we're definitely going to need some external support soon. But we're just happy to help. And yeah, definitely at the events. Basically, we're at every Sigma show this year. We find the best partners at Sigma. And we're venturing into new territories. Africa's a target for us. Asia's already, I'd say, one of our core markets. Europe, we're quite strong. Next for us is going to be Latin America. So we'll actually have a booth both in the upcoming South Africa show and Brazil.
No, that's amazing. Good luck at those shows, and I hope you'll also have some time to, see around, Oliver.
We try.
And regarding better, when you write esports, it just comes on your Google search, but maybe, Vital, you can tell more on better.
So basically, I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn or any other type of messenger. I believe I'm using everything that this world has and is quite at least popular in one country in the world. Also, yes, you can reach out to our team or even simply tag Better on LinkedIn or any other social media. And our website, better.co. And when it comes to specifically to the World Cup, we prepared a separate page which is World Cup Boost better.co, where you can find more details and reports and more information about how this content and why do you need this content.
Excellent. I think this was a great start for our World Cup 2026 podcast series. If you're getting ready for the tournament and listening to this, I think your to-do list just got longer, but probably much clearer after what the gentleman shared with us today. So massive thank you, gentlemen, today, Roger, Vitalii, Oliver, for sharing actionable tips, checklists, insights today with us. And everyone, if you enjoyed the first part of our World Cup 2026 series, make sure to follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for the upcoming sessions. And once again, thank you for joining us, gentlemen. I will see you all at the next Revpanda live session.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot.